Hello and welcome back to the Discover Virginia Beach podcast, where we set out to discover, define, and do everything that the Virginia Beach area has to offer for both locals and tourists alike. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, and if you're just now tuning in, we are in the middle of season 2, discovering everything that Virginia Beach has to offer, and I am joined by recording artist and folk singer songwriter Peter Sun. Peter draws much of his inspiration from the splendor of nature, crafting captivating composition that evokes a sense of nostalgia with a new contemporary feel. He also writes records and produces all of his own music, infusing heartfelt lyrics and timeless melodies that mirror his love for the outdoors. Peter has been featured in the Kinda Cool magazine and a part of the Undiscovered piece and featured in Classical Crossover magazine. Peter, with that said, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yeah, well, Peter, I understand you are not from the Virginia Beach area originally. Rather, you grew up in a small valley town in Pennsylvania. Would you mind sharing what was it like growing up in a small town? And of course, how did music enter the scene for you?
Yeah. So, like you said, I grew up in a little valley town outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And, days were spent growing up, always outside. Our neighborhood backed up to like some train tracks and a bunch of woods, and there was a little river back there, and we would just we'd have a good time with our BB guns and things like that. And anyway, I got into music because I started singing this song, Proud to Be an American by Lee Greenwood, and people around me were like, oh, you sing that actually well. I was about 9, and so I was like, oh, you know what, I do like singing. So I just started singing more and started taking voice lessons, and I got into theater while I was in elementary school, and did professional theater up there, and eventually moved down here to Virginia when I was probably about 11 or so.
I love that. What a fun story. So music seemed to really enter into your scene very early on in life with your people telling you you're actually a good singer. And of course, having an opportunity to be in theater. Did when was playing instruments entered into the scene? What was the first instrument you learned how to play?
Yeah, so my grandma on my mom's side, she played piano, and then my grandma on my dad's side sang. So my grandma on my mom's side, she taught me since I was 5 years old how to play piano, and so that was my first instrument. And then of course singing was always part of my family culture and dynamic. Every get together was singing, so music was always just a large part of growing up, and has increased its presence in my life, obviously, as of now.
I love that. I love that, especially how it's, what seems like a normal family tradition can really expand into a career and a path for you to really, become an outlet and share the music that you create, which is wonderful. Do you play any other instruments, or how many more other instruments do you have besides the piano and of course vocals?
Right. So I play guitar. Guitar's the newest add-in. I've been playing for about 2 years, and it's honestly it's becoming like one of my favorite instruments. I write almost exclusively on guitar as of recently. I love guitar. I'm not very good at guitar, but that's what I like about it, is because I have to remain simple when creating songs, and people remember how a song makes them feel over the technicalities of the song. So being a musician who's studied and for many years, it forces me. It's a great exercise to make it simple.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of simple and simpler times, are there any memories of Pennsylvania that stand out to you that, shaped and influenced the way you interact with music now?
Sure. Yeah. So at the time, I went to a church that was in the heart of the mountains, Perry County, Perry County, Pennsylvania. And so it was just mountainous and beautiful. And so just the whole culture up there was very outdoorsy, and it inspired. But I actually have a funny story about that. In Pennsylvania, like I said earlier, I grew up in a neighborhood that backed up to these railroad tracks and forests, and my brothers and I'm one of 4 brothers, and so we went and we'd go to explore with our BB guns and things like that out into the forest. And one time we found a whole little campsite of somebody who was living back there. And you know, when you're with your brothers, with your friends, you guys are all from the ages of 9 to 13. You know, this is our land. You know, this is our domain. And so we'd see this guy's name all over stuff that was marked back there. He just lived back there. And so what we ended up doing was, again, like I said, we were like, "This is our land." So we went back and we found his campsite, and we didn't see him. We later saw him, but we found this campsite and then we took it apart and we like threw stuff around. We were like, "This is our place." And in hindsight, it wasn't very cool. But you know, it was just like, who is this guy? He's not supposed to be back here. And anyway, a couple years go by and I'm telling this story. And we called the police eventually because we found weapons and stuff like that. This guy, it was starting to get real weird, a lot of substances back there as well. And so anyway, we called the police and police go back there and they, you know, find it out. And a couple years later, we talked to one of the police officers, and you know, small town. And I talked to one of the police officers. He's like, "Yeah, that guy was a paranoid schizophrenic that was like kicked out of Pennsylvania, and he was just living back there." He's like, "You guys could have like really gotten hurt if you guys were messing around with stuff back there. And like, here we are aggravating the mess out of this guy and just, you know, just totally messing with them." And so that was just kind of one of those crazy Tom Sawyer kind of stories that definitely stuck with me. And my brothers and I, we all still talk about that, and our friends that lived up there, we still talk about that story.
Wow, what a tale. So this
Yeah.
individual been kicked out of Pennsylvania, and you just so happen to stumble on his campsite and clash.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy we ended up being safe because we were really, really messing around.
Yeah, wow. So throughout your childhood, you grew up in Pennsylvania, and I'd love to know, Peter, what brought you to the coastal Virginia area? And then, of course, as I ask every guest, what got you to stick around and build your life for your music here?
Sure. So my dad is a pastor, and so about close to 10 years ago, he took a church that was down here and moved the family. We all set up camp basically, and have been here ever since. My brother's here and he's married, he has a kid, and my awesome nephew, and they lived, you know, just down the street, and we just kind of, you know, started a new life just down here. And what kept me around is obviously my family, but I also go to college and I commute to one of the schools around here.
Love it. Love it. So you are a folk singer songwriter. Would you be willing to pull back the curtain a bit for us and
Sure.
share with us your process for crafting lyrics and music altogether?
Yeah. So similar to what I said earlier, is I love writing on guitar because it makes me, you know, have to simple it down. But when I simple down musically, it pushes the lyrics to be elevated, right? So you know, you're able to express a lot and you know, use your experiences, but also you can use the creative tool of romanticizing those experiences as well. So it's finding that balance of being relatable and writing about very true things. But sometimes you can be a little bit too open, and you need to also protect those things that you want to keep to yourself. Some people put everything out, and that's good. But for me, I like to draw certain boundaries of to kind of have that, to avoid Taylor Swifting basically. And that's no hate against Taylor Swift, but I like to, you know, keep a level of respect to those people who have been in my life, or if I'm writing about them or whatnot, or those situations. But yeah, so again, keeping things simple and writing true and honest things that I think people really care about. I mean, nature is one of the driving forces since the beginning of time that has inspired creativity and art. And you know, to kind of follow those roots of, you know, what we're living alongside the nature and the animals, and you know, kind of, you know, trying to channel that through music as well. I think it's a very important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, you know, keeping the mystery in the music is you know, definitely a great tactic to use to you know, also keep your music interesting, and also to protect, like you said, those individuals or people or experiences that may like to keep personal and protected. With all that, I mean, inspiration plays a huge
Yeah.
part. Your inspiration from, as you mentioned, nature, but also
Yeah.
inspiration from other musicians. I know
Yeah.
you mentioned before the conversation, Brian Wilson, John Denver, Simon Garfunkel, to name
Yeah.
a few. When it comes to your unique sound, is there a process or method for analyzing work without directly copying someone else's? And can you
Yeah.
share with us any examples of ways you intentionally do that during your musical creative process?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely something you have to think about. And sometimes you're writing a melody and you're like, oh, this is so good. And then a couple days later, you're like, wait a minute. Now, I think I've heard that before. It kind of like with anything, you don't want to copy or mimic, but also at the same time, trying to think about what they did and how are you different from them and how are you similar? What are some things that you like to pull? What are things you don't like to pull? It's all just kind of this balance game of you also don't, you don't just want to be, I know for me personally, I don't just want to, be a cover artist, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to, I want to be original and create original music. And so finding the inspirations of the inspirations, that's a lot of times where I go, because it's a little bit more removed from that artist that I like, but it's what inspired them to make theirs. So, it's definitely a process, but if anyone ever figures it out, they got to let me know, because I'm very
Yeah.
interested in that.
Yeah. Well, the old phrase, it's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
Putting
Right.
back to earlier, probably church days for yourself. But yeah,
The
it's
ecclesiastical view.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. With that said, Peter, I'd love to share for the audience, maybe
Mhm.
folks who are in the Virginia Beach area, can they expect to see you at
Yeah.
any live concerts? And if so, where do you play?
Yeah. So right now I'm in the process of booking and scheduling shows, and working with a couple of booking agents and things like that. Right now I'm scheduling a show in Richmond. I haven't scheduled any shows in Virginia Beach yet, but there are some different opportunities and open doors that I'm most likely going to be I will be playing here. So I just don't have anything announced quite yet.
I love that. I love that. And total side note, Peter, we had the Suffolk Tourism Board on for, an earlier episode of season 2. We also have
Yeah.
the Virginia Beach Farmers Market as well. I know those two folks
Yes.
personally let me know they are interested in connecting with local artists. So if that is
Oh,
something you're
great.
interested in, hit me up afterwards. We can definitely get you connected there, because they were especially the Suffolk one. She was like, "Yeah, we're looking for more stuff to do. If you know any musicians," I was like,
Oh,
big
yeah.
musician on season 2. Let me check in with him. With that said, Peter, that is more of a personal question.
I appreciate that. I
Would love
appreciate
to
that.
have you play some live shows here in the area. For live music in general, are there any favorite places or memories that you have of playing live music in general? Anything that stand out to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I have experience when I was, I think, 16 or 17. I was invited to write a few songs and perform them in an off-Broadway show in New York. And so that was probably one of my favorite times to ever perform. It was Black Friday. So it was beautiful in New York, all Christmas, and Christmas is coming up. So I always think about that. But again, I did a lot of professional theater up in Pennsylvania and things like that. But um, as of recently, I've just been kind of performing more through the social media rather than venues at the moment. And I've been building up the discography of my music and working on, my whole look, and, trying to build up something that is worth to be listened to and worth to hear live. So now it's finally this growing stage of getting to a place wherever live performances are on the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's no shame in the social media game, so to
Yeah,
speak. That's where a lot of new music and artists are found. That's where I found
for
you when I
sure.
was doing my research for the podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
with 1,000 YouTube subscribers and 10,000 plus followers on Instagram, it's
Yeah.
worth noting that hey, you do have a digital audience that exists that likes hearing your music, which I'm sure is very rewarding for you.
Yeah. It's been hard work, but it's exciting to see it grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand you enjoy the outdoors, and coastal Virginia
Mhm.
area has a lot to
Do.
offer there, from hiking to biking trails to
Yeah.
leisure water activities, which I will preface shout out to season 2, because we have a lot of folks in that arena coming on the show. So super excited to talk about in later episodes. But for you specifically, Peter, how has the landscape of the Virginia Beach area influenced your songwriting?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really excellent question. Um, I I have just been kind of discovering all these different little pockets of Virginia wildlife, and it's been exceptional. Super into mountain biking, and a lot of times I'll go up to the Pocahontas trails and mountain bike. And there's a lot of different locations around here. And for anyone listening, Pocahontas trails are up around Richmond area, but around here in Virginia Beach area, there's Dismal Swamp and there's some other locations. And so I think all of those, anytime you're outside, anytime at least I'm outside and doing something active or being engaged with that, I'm always inspired. So it's hard to like pick out one specific thing. But there's definitely some songs in my lyrics, especially the song "Lead Me to the Water." There's I use a lot of references to nature and kind of showing that, love is more than just, someone's a sunset, right? But more of like a whole ecosystem and kind of watching out how everything works together, and it's a whole process, and it's not just one thing, or someone's not just beautiful like a sunrise or something like that. They're a whole again ecosystem of, there's lakes and rivers, and there's river beds and rocks and all sorts, and trees and branches, and kind of anything you can kind of think of. And I do talk about canoeing. I love canoeing. Spending the day in your canoe is one of the lines, and I'm a big canoe guy.
I love that, Peter, and I think from what you said, we'll definitely snapshot that, because I think there's another song in there about an ecosystem in general.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you sharing your insight. We do have some fun questions coming up for you about your song,
Yeah.
lyrics, but in the meantime, I'd love to know from you. So
Yeah.
obviously, community plays a large part in the way we live and conduct our businesses here in the area. Can you share with us about your efforts to showcase your talents within the community? And of course, I'd love to hear more about, your, for example, your nursing home and your communities that you service as well.
Yeah. So that's all kind of tied into one. That's a great question. I have a huge heart for older people, and I think they're just, really wise, really funny, and I think the elderly rock. And so I like to spend as much time as I can with some of these folks, and playing at nursing homes and assisted living facilities is one of my favorites, because I also think it's a humbling thing, because no matter how well things are doing online, or how crazy things are blowing up, or maybe they're not, it's always great to come back to these places where people are just there to absorb the music, and to see somebody who's, taking time and not only playing, but then after the shows, I like to go and talk to them and kind of get to know their stories as well. They just spent an hour listening to my story, so it's only right to talk to them and hear their stories and their experiences. So that's how I like to kind of engage in the community. And I like to do a lot of other kind of, especially now it's coming up with Christmas time, there's a lot of volunteer events. This summer I was able to participate with a local church, and building a house for the homeless, and things like that. Community service is one of my favorite things, but to do music as well with nursing homes and assisted living is my ultimate favorite.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's the theme of a lot of our guests here on the show, is just figuring out, like, not only just having a business or having a voice in the community, using it for the greater good, for doing something that you might not get return in value for necessarily.
Right.
Peter, we love that, and we really appreciate you sharing that. When it comes to the Virginia Beach people and community members, I'd love to know, has there been any specific, maybe nursing home stories, or people you bumped into, or maybe while you were building your church, working with the church, rebuilding a home? Any stories stand out to you, as far as maybe where you found some inspiration for some of your song lyrics, or maybe just songwriting in general?
Yeah. I got inspired to start songwriting because I was taking this music production class at a school of music in Virginia Beach. And he's my mentor now, but the teacher at the time, his name is Gary Juju Garlic, and he's one of the greatest men I've known. And he's just an overall great guy. And he was teaching music production. And so I got involved in this class, and I was in 7th grade. And he was talking, and I was learning, but I just felt like I was lagging behind in the class. But then he was like, Matthew, and because I told him, I was like, hey, I want to quit. And he was like, Matthew, if you don't catch up in the next week, like, you just stay in the class. If you don't catch up next week, I'll pay for this month's tuition. Like, just keep going in the class. And I was like, all right, Mr. Garlic. So stick with the class, and music production just, that lit a fire in me. And that was the reason I started writing songs, because I had to start writing songs for assignments. And so anyway, years down the line, now I go back to that class and visit the high school or high school, middle school, and I'm able to talk about music production with the other students. And it's just been really amazing, because Mr. Garlic has been there for the, has just been a great mentor over the past couple of years. So, and we've just always have so many crazy stories doing gigs together and having fun. And it's so fun to go from a student now to, a fellow professional that's able to play gigs together. And, he's still my mentor, and, we still get together. And I think that's someone in the community that has definitely shaped and really inspired me.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. So he essentially was willing to pay for your tuition if
Yeah.
it came to it, to give you the opportunity to pursue music, because he
Yeah.
saw what we all see now when we listen to music. Hopefully we'll be able to take a snippet and put it at the end of this episode. We'll see, of course, with licensing and such, but
Sure.
this passion that you have and
Yeah.
the way it transcends into music is a very great gift and a very noble thing of you to use, and very fortunate. And what an incredible story of someone to want to continue on and invest in you in that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of song lyrics,
Sure.
I'm adding a new section. We've never done this before. So you'll be our first guest for this. Typically we do a rapid fire section, but this one,
Sure.
I'm going to title it Explain the Lyric. So
Sure.
lyric, I've been watching some of your YouTube videos, so I'm trying to stay away from something you might have already covered.
Sure.
I'll share a lyric and just ask maybe, the inspiration for that lyric, or
Sure.
perhaps whatever was going on that moment you feel comfortable sharing. Sound good?
Great. It sounds amazing.
All right. So from the song Say Goodnight, the chorus repeats back, what kind of song would you like me to sing for you? What kind of song would you like to hear? What kind of song would keep you near?
Mhm.
Can you take us? Sorry, I butchered that again.
No.
Can you mind repeating that for us? You probably know a little bit better than me.
Yeah, the lyric is, what kind of song would you like me to sing to you? What kind of song would you like to hear? I don't want to make you cry, but something to say goodnight, or something along those lines. Well, the reason I wrote that was, I was at this place wherever I wasn't sure exactly where my relationship was with somebody. And so at that point, you're kind of like, ooh, as a songwriter, I always just write no matter what. And so that's my way of, journaling, or kind of keeping record of, what's going on. So that song, that line is kind of explaining, like, what kind of song do I write right now? What words do I write down? Is this a love song? Is this just nothing? Is this a nothing song? Is this going to go anywhere? Is this, not going to go anywhere? So that's kind of like the meaning of that. And trying to maybe kind of move in the direction of putting a label on something, and making it official, but you're just not sure yet if that's where they're at.
Love it. Love it. Next one is from Andrea Says. Who is Andrea, or what does Andrea represent? And why is what she says so important to you?
Yeah. So Andrea, or Andrea, that's one of my favorite songs. I wanted this like Baroque kind of sound to it, something very classical. And Andrea kind of represents the kind of like your classic ex-girlfriend, someone who's, was really important to you, and someone that you kind of gave everything to, and it just didn't work out. And then there's lines talking about, seeing, her friends at the grocery store, and, having moments of that wherever there's little bits and pieces of their life. And she's spreading your name all over the town, stuff like that, wherever you're like, all right, this is getting enough, classic, ex-girlfriend. But I think it's probably like, you're more like your toxic ex-girlfriend who, when she was with you, maybe couldn't stand you, but now that she's, you're not together anymore, she has nothing to say but talk about you,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Last one for you.
Sure.
Second to last one. Sorry. In Backseat, you share the phrase, feel each other's heartbeats, fall in love, which I'll slow that down again for those of you listening. So feel each other's heartbeats, fall in love.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what led you to creating this song specifically? Because it seems like a very intimate time, but it's also, on a broader note, something that, hearkening back to the Lion King, can we all feel the love tonight without being easy, is something in a lot of ways we all want to connect with somebody on at some level at some point in their lives. So what was it like for you in that moment?
Yeah. Backseat is definitely one of my favorite songs I've written. It's definitely one of the more suggestive songs that, I don't know if I would have put that out now, but at the time when I put that out, it's kind of those, those first moments wherever you're together and with somebody, and, maybe it's just like like something stupid that was in like high school. I wrote that while I was in high school. And so to make it relevant now, it's one of those things where those moments that are like just super quiet and just super sweet and tender of being together with somebody, and to, have the moments just like, feel the heartbeats of somebody else, or to, hold the hand of somebody else. It's like the small, intimate things that we really fall in love with. And Backseat was all about that. And again, one of the more suggestive songs, maybe by title, but when you listen to it, you're like, oh, this isn't talking about anything, suggestive. It's more talking about, falling in love with the small details the small details of being with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one for you, Peter.
Yeah.
How is New York? How is New
Yeah.
York?
Yeah. How's New York? Isn't that the age-old question? Yeah. How's New York is one of my favorite songs. But that song was written because at the time I didn't have anyone who lived in New York that I was like in love with, but it represented, there were times whenever I moved, especially, but there were times wherever people would move away from me, wherever I just really, really missed them, just really miss them and miss being together. And, if I really, some of these folks, I really loved. And that song brings a place of, there's a line that's like, I see your posts, you're doing fine. I wish that I could still call you mine, or something like that. It's a long distance game, and sometimes long distance is how it goes and other times not, but it's a difficult game to play.
Well, Peter, we really appreciate you diving into those lyrics just a little bit more,
Yeah.
and sharing that with us. Because once again, I personally have really enjoyed your song, and I'm very excited to share it with our audience here, because it is very light, very fun, in a lot of ways. Definitely Virginia Beach vibe when it comes to just the mellow nature, with very thoughtful words. And with that said, Peter, we'd love to roll into our next section. We have rapid fire questions. These are fast. Feel free to explain in as much detail or as little detail as you like. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm so ready.
All right. Favorite hiking or biking trail to visit here in the Virginia Beach area that you have yet to mention? So Pocahontas Trails, Dismal Swamp are out of the running.
Northwest River Park is my go-to.
Love it. Favorite Virginia beach to visit?
Sandbridge. It's got to be Sandbridge.
Gotta love the Sandbridge secrets.
Got to. Yes. Yeah.
What's your favorite instrument to play and why?
Guitar. And kind of like what I said earlier, got to keep it simple.
Now, when it comes to your specific preferences, is there a best place or best resource to get all of your musical gear and equipment tuned up for that next creative project?
Oh, that's a really great question. Normally I just utilize any type of local music store. I one time used Music and Arts in Chesapeake. There's also different places, I've used Guitar Center,
Local.
I'm not ashamed to admit it.
That's okay. That's okay. When they have I was curious to know. These are a lot of questions personally. If you could bring any musician, past or present, with you to perform a show here in Virginia Beach, who would it be and why?
Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, 100%. Not only does he have has the coastal view, obviously the West Coast, but he has a timeless sound. And I was able to see and meet the rest of the Beach Boys when they came to a concert up in Pennsylvania. That was crazy. But I still have yet to meet Brian. But he's alive, obviously. But I would do anything to perform with him.
Brian, if you're out there listening,
please, Brian,
have Peter perform a concert here, Virginia Beach. We'd love to have it. Pharrell needs some backup singers. We got you covered.
Yes, Pharrell, please, if you're hearing this, bring Brian Wilson.
I've sent him and his team dozens of DMs, so I'm hoping one day somebody will through and read them. So yeah,
let's go
next time. Peter, this has been a great conversation. We really appreciate you carving some time out of your schedule to come have a conversation with us, to be vulnerable, and of course to share with us how you have discovered Virginia Beach. With that said, I'd love to roll out the virtual red carpet for you, my friend. Please share any creative projects, any special events that you have upcoming. The floor is all yours.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. And I love Virginia Beach and the 757 area. It's an absolutely incredible music scene. A lot of great artists are here. And I just want to say I'm working on, I just put out an EP album called Lead Me to the Water, and it's a folk singer-songwriter album. And I'm working on another project to release in the spring. And I still have to yet to title it, but it's an album that's going to be, again, a folk album. And I can't wait to perform it all up and down the East Coast next year.
Well, super excited for that. Definitely stay tuned with Peter's son and everything he has going on in the link in the description below. Peter, this has been fantastic. Thank you for your time. And of course, thank you to our dedicated listeners for checking out another episode of the Discover Virginia Beach podcast. If you have to do so already, please check the link in the description below and fill out a review. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, hit that like button, leave a comment. Love to know what your thoughts are. And if there's anything I can do differently or ask any different questions, I am all ears. With that said, we hope you join in for another episode later on in the week, and we'll talk to you then. Bye for now.